Hello everyone, my name is Emerson, and today I am going to be sharing with you my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. I absolutely love the horror genre, as you might already know if you've seen my channel, and I'm going to share with you my favorite horror movies as someone who has watched a lot of horror movies. So hopefully you can find some of the best that you can watch as well. This was definitely a really hard list to narrow down because I have seen so many horror movies, but I really like these top 10. These are just movies that I have a special place for in my little spooky heart. Okay, so number 10. Okay, so number 10. Please don't judge me. Okay, Okay, hear me out. So, it's The Boy. Please don't click off this video. I swear I have good taste in movies. Okay. I know the movie isn't good in a traditional sense, in the regular definition of good. However, hear me out. This movie is so entertaining. I love it so much. I don't know why. It's like one of those trash things that you watch that is just fun because it's trash and you know that it's trash, but it's so good. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I have just a sentimental attachment to it. I also watched it during the pandemic when I was doing my master's degree and I was stressed out and I was studying for exams and it was insane. And I turned that movie on to relax between my breaks of studying, and it was like so cozy and it was ridiculous, but I absolutely loved it. And let me tell you why I love it. So this movie is about a girl who is invited to this old English country home. It is like a big historical manor. She is invited here to look after a couple's child for their vacation, for the duration of their vacation. And when she arrives to do her job, she meets the couple and they show her their child, which is a porcelain doll of a boy. And it is very creepy. The porcelain doll is just kind of staring blankly. It is a very creepy little doll. But they treat the doll like it is their son. And they expect her to treat the doll as though he is a child and to do all these tasks associated with looking after him. And if she doesn't, weird things start to happen, right? So spooky. Okay. Let me tell you why I love this movie so much. That woman was living my dream. I would absolutely love to be hired to stay in a gorgeous old country mansion in the middle of nowhere, in a historical, beautiful building, looking after a little haunted, creepy doll. Can you imagine, like, getting paid to do that? I would pay you to have that experience. And it was so cute, and I just love how it did. Okay, and I know there's a big twist in it, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but if you have seen it, and tag your spoilers or put a little asterisk above them if you've seen it and you want to talk about this in the comments. But I do love how it turns out in the end, but like right before it, I kind of wish that it just kept going where it was because I loved the little story of the haunted doll, and like it's just a little haunted doll and I just love it. Okay, so this movie is in 10th place because I know that in terms of film, in an artistic sense, it's not the best. You know, I know that it could be a lot better. However, I absolutely love it. So, sorry. Okay, so my number 9 is Ringu, and this is the original Japanese version of The Ring. So this was the original movie before the English remake was made, and that is the one that's probably more well known in the Western world. It might have been the one that you've seen. However, this movie is incredible, and if you haven't seen the Japanese version, I highly encourage you to watch it. I absolutely love Japanese horror from this era because it is able to do so much and give so much dread and atmosphere with so little. And it's so subtle. There's not a lot going on, but you feel this fear and this impending doom the whole time, even though, you know, there's not crazy graphics, there's not a bunch of violence, you know, it's not super, super scary. It's just like the feeling that something is about to happen and the way that the shots are taken. It is just, I love it. I love it so much. It also has sort of like a mystery feel. It's very much like a horror mystery, this movie. A lot of you probably already know the premise of The Ring, but I will just explain it very quickly to you. So there's a girl that watches this very creepy tape that she finds, and then she gets a phone call telling her that she is going to die in 7 days. And she then goes on an investigation to try to figure out, where did this tape come from? What does this mean? All of that. Amazing movie, and definitely a horror classic. And if you have not seen it in the original Japanese version, you definitely have to treat yourself to watching it. Okay, number 8. This one is a bit obscure, but I really love it, and it's very, very weird, but it is so artistic in the way it's made. This one is Kokodi Coco, and this movie came out a few years ago. It's fairly recent, though. And the premise is that a couple is dealing with a recent tragedy, and they decide to go on a camping trip to kind of go through and process their trauma. While on this camping trip, they get kind of stuck in a time loop in which this almost like carnival troupe keeps arriving, and this group starts attacking them in several ways. And every time the husband gets up, he has a memory of what has happened the previous time, but his wife does not. So he eventually realizes that this is just going to keep happening over and over and over again. I think movies that mess with time like this are very ambitious, and I really like when they're able to pull it off, because it is a very difficult plot to pull off. But I absolutely love it, and I think it works so well in the horror genre. I love horror that explores mental struggles, mental illness, or trauma, or the way we deal with tragedy. I think that horror is one of the best ways to explore this, because it can be so visceral, and it really tells a story in a really impactful way, and it shows how horrific horror that something like this can be, that we go through, that is just so seen as so human, when in our minds it is much scarier than, you know, any monster. So number 7 is a fairly recent one too. I think it came out like a couple years ago, but this is Saint Maude, and I love this movie because I absolutely love movies that have sort of like religious hysteria. This movie was really interesting to me because of my background in studying neuropsychology. You can look at it without looking at it from a medical perspective, and it is still incredibly interesting and entertaining. You could look at it purely from like a spiritual point of view, or you could look at it from a scientific point of view, and it is still incredibly fascinating. So this girl, Maude, is incredibly religious, like to her own detriment. She is extremely dedicated to her religion, to the point that it has become unhealthy. She starts to make herself suffer in different ways because she feels like she has to do this for the purpose of her religion. She is just extremely obsessed with her religion, which is Christianity. She is a nurse, and something has happened that she is no longer working in the hospital that she used to work at, some very traumatic event for her. So she is now working as a nurse for a specific patient in her own home. And she is taking time off of working in a larger hospital because of this traumatic event. And this event seems to have spurred on her sort of religious hysteria. This movie is so visually captivating. I absolutely love it. I love the way it dealt with her condition, because if you look at it from a medical perspective, it is such an accurate depiction of a certain kind of epilepsy, and it is fascinating to see it done this way and without really saying a word about it. So if you are a neuropsych, watch this movie. Just go in and like check it out and like see what you think. I think it's also like an amazing commentary on the lengths that people will go for religion, like the extremes that they will go to because they are so dedicated to a certain religion. So that's really fascinating to me. And I really like this movie. Okay, so number 6 is The Descent. And this is about a group of female friends that decide to go cave exploring. They are very outdoorsy girls, and they decide that they are going to explore this certain cave that has not yet been explored. And when they go into it, they find more than they were expecting. This movie doesn't necessarily have like the huge amount of depth that maybe like Kokodi Coco or Saint Maude have, but it has an amazing entertainment value, I will tell you. I just really love this movie, and I could watch it over and over again. I think the dynamics between the characters are super interesting. I absolutely love the horror aspect of this movie. I think that it is so well implemented, and you feel, oh my God, just so on edge the entire time. It's one of those movies that's just like really stressful to watch, and I really enjoyed it, honestly. I think it's definitely like a cozy watch. Like you could watch it multiple times and you could just enjoy it. You know, I think it's like it's not known as a classic, but to me it's almost like it could be a horror classic because it's something that you could rewatch and really enjoy. I think it's also really cool to see a lot of strong female characters, and especially since this movie is just entirely a group of female protagonists, and they are doing a lot of things associated with male characters, being physically strong and fighting and showing a lot of bravery and determination. And it is just really cool to see female characters not just being helpless maidens in a horror movie. So that's really cool too. Okay, so number 5 is Hereditary. And this movie, you're probably not surprised to see it on here. This is probably on a lot of people's top 10 lists because this is definitely a favorite for a lot of people. A lot of people in the horror community, people who love horror movies, they absolutely love Ari Aster because he is an incredible filmmaker and he makes some really incredible horror that is very elevated. And I absolutely love his movies, and Hereditary was one of the scariest movies that I've seen for sure. Not only was it scary though, it was very impactful in a disturbing way. This movie won't just scare you, it will stay with you because it's so harrowing and a lot of it is very tragic. So this movie is about a family, and after a certain tragedy, which I will not spoil, it comes close enough to the beginning, they start to try to communicate with their lost loved one and instead invite in something sinister. This is not your regular ghost story. This is not your regular haunting. This is not the same horror movie you've seen a million times. It is not like, oh no, they try to talk to someone and now there's a demon in the house and now they have to invite in a priest and then there's the final scene or whatever. Like, no, it's not formulaic like that at all. It is completely new and unique. And I think that is what has captured so many people's attention and why so many horror fans love it, because it did not serve us the same exact plot that we've gotten every single time we've had a story like this. It took that very well-known story of, okay, someone has passed away and something supernatural comes in that is threatening or dangerous, and it turns it around and it gives you something completely new and horrifying in a completely different way. I cannot say much about this movie because it will spoil it. I have to just let you watch it, because if you haven't seen it, you have to watch it. Honestly, if you're a horror fan and you haven't seen Hereditary, first of all, if you think If you think that you don't get scared by horror movies anymore, oh my God, watch Hereditary and then come back here and tell me how it went. I watched this movie at 2 a.m. in the dark by myself in my apartment. And that was a terrible idea, but I thoroughly enjoyed myself after I was able to finally get to sleep. My number 4 is Annihilation. And this is a sci-fi horror movie. And I do love me some sci-fi horror. This one is, very unique as well. The ones that I like are all, they have to be a bit original. You know, it can't be the same thing we've seen over and over again. So I really do love Annihilation, and for similar reasons to why I love Hereditary. It's because it is something so disturbing, and it is horror that stays with you for so many different reasons, not just because it scared you, because it gave you like this sense of existential dread, because it opened up your mind to so many new ideas, and it terrified you in a way that felt very real and very human, if that makes sense. This movie definitely plays on existential horror, which I did not expect, and it keeps going in that direction more and more, to the point where like it becomes so abstract, but at the same time so real. Like it's still so impactful because it I don't know how to put together words talking about this movie. It is about this woman whose husband goes missing in this area that is completely restricted. It has been completely blocked off because people have gone missing when they tried to go through there. It seems to be some sort of scientific anomaly, and they sent military troops in there to try to see what was going on, and that did not work. And that's when her husband went missing, and now they are trying to send in scientists. So this woman and a bunch of other female scientists are going into this area to try to figure out what is going on. Why is there an anomaly here? Why are people going missing and not coming back? This is, one of the most unique horror movies that I've seen. Some of the visuals and the sounds will stay with you forever. It has so much depth to it, the story. And if you really enjoy existential sort of stories, existential horror, existential fiction, or any sort of like philosophical kind of stories, you will really enjoy this because it really speaks to our mortality. I also love that we have a group of female protagonists that are strong and can take on the horror without any assistance. So do love that. Okay, my number 3 is a recent one too. I think it came out like a year and a half ago, maybe. It is the movie X, and I absolutely loved this movie. I saw it in theaters with my boyfriend and some of my friends, and it was so weird, and it was exactly what I wanted from a horror movie. First of all, it's based in the 70s, which I absolutely love. So I love movies, media in general based in the 60s and 70s. I love the aesthetic. I love everything about it. I just find it so fascinating, and I really just love living in that world while I'm watching or reading something. So great start that way. This movie explores things about shame, religion, aging, mortality. It is incredible, and it does it in sort of like a very quirky kind of horror way, which I do enjoy. That sort of lightheartedness with the mixed in with the darkness. It's not really like horror comedy, but it has like a lighthearted feel at the same time while being very dark, if you know what I mean. This movie is about a girl who is in a group of say adult stars, right? And they are going with their like whole filming crew to stay at this house to film their movies. And they are staying in I guess the guest house on the property of this very elderly couple. And They soon find that things are quite weird when they get there, and there's something off about the couple in the house. And this just goes places that you would never expect it to go. It is so fun. The acting is so incredible. Mia Goth is the main character, and I absolutely love her. She's one of my favorite actresses, and she killed it in this role. She was amazing. So number 2 is The Ritual. And I had a really hard time actually deciding which one I was going to put first and which one I was going to put second in this list, because this is nearly like a tie for me, this one and my number 1. Just keep that in mind when you hear number 1 as well. This is pretty much, I could switch the two of them. They're pretty much equal in my book. So The Ritual is probably like one of the most cathartic horror movies I have seen. It feels like such a release, like you just let out a breath at the end of the movie, and it is such an incredible feeling, and I rarely get that when watching a movie. The Ritual is about a group of friends that decides to hike in the wilderness in Sweden, following the loss of one of their friends. And this story is so incredible. This is a monster horror, so there is a monster, and I think the design of the monster is so cool. It's probably one of my favorite horror movie monsters. I think that it looks so interesting. I drew it one time, I think, because I just love the design of it. And yeah, you only see it in fleeting moments until there is like a shot where you fully see it and you can see it in its full horrific glory, and it is incredible. But yeah, it is very much based in Swedish folklore, and I really enjoy that too. I love folk horror, and I find it so fascinating to pull from these old traditional stories from this mythology, because like growing up like in a place like Ireland, you know, I would hear a lot of folklore, a lot of tales like this, and there would be a lot of superstition, and I think it's so cool to play off of that, where we can have this sort of superstition that we can feel while we're watching the movie in regards to this folklore and this mythology. This movie deals with the topic of guilt and shame and processing that and figuring out how to let it go and to move on with your life. And wow, it is powerful and it is heavy. It's not just one of those movies that's like too deep that it's not entertaining anymore, you know, like it's too focused on being a metaphor that it's just slow. Like it is still extremely gripping, and you will find it entertaining regardless, but the deeper meaning of it is really what will stay with you after you finish the movie. So my number 1 current favorite horror movie is MidSummer. So I had to put 2 Ari Aster films on here. Sorry, but yeah, this had to be at the top of the list. Like I said, it's a little bit tied with my number 2. I could switch them just depending on what my criteria is. But yeah, at the moment, I would put this at number 1, my favorite horror movie. This horror movie also involves Swedish folklore, funnily enough. I don't know what's up with me and enjoying Swedish-based horror movies. Yeah, so this one has to do with a cult in Sweden and their MidSummer celebration. This group of Americans is invited by their Swedish friend to come to his home country and come to his commune where he is from and to participate in their MidSummer celebration. So this is a tradition that they bring people from elsewhere to join them in celebrating this tradition. As you can imagine, a bunch of people going to visit a cult. Things don't go well. So as you would expect, the really unique thing about this movie is that it is entirely set during the daytime because it is during Swedish summer. So it is bright all the time, like even very, very late into the nighttime. So you don't really see any darkness, like very, very briefly in this movie. Is there any darkness? And that is so incredible that it was able to achieve such a level of horror and dread without darkness, without relying on darkness to provide it. It was able to scare you so thoroughly in daylight. I don't think there's many movies that have done that. The beginning of this movie really stays with you. I think the beginning is almost one of the most disturbing parts. I think the visual is very disturbing and impactful. That definitely stays with you, and it almost imitates the trauma that the main character is going through while she is on this trip, and that she's still trying to process while she's trying to just act normal and do this vacation with her friends and with her boyfriend. It's about relationships, it's about breakups, it's about family, and loss. This movie is so beautiful. I would say one of the things I love about this movie is how pretty it is and how detailed all of the shots are. I mean, there are some shots of the movie in which you can see the plot of the movie made on a tapestry or painted on a wall, and it is so incredible, just these details that went into this movie, and everything is so well thought out, and it is just stunning to look at. And yeah, I absolutely love it. I've seen it several times and it hasn't gotten old for me. I love cult-related horror. I love cult-related anything. I find it really interesting. And yeah, this is definitely my top horror movie of all time currently. We'll see how it changes when I watch more horror movies in the future. And there are many that I absolutely love that did not make this list, but they are incredible movies nonetheless. So type some of your favorite horror movies down below. I would love to hear if you have some recommendations for me as well, based off of the ones that I said that I like. I would love to hear them because I am always ready to watch more horror movies at all times. Trust me. You guys are amazing for watching. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed it. I would love if you would subscribe so I can see you back the next time, and make sure you hit the like before you go. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.